Jordan Sr., who came to St. Petersburg, but he loaned money to the city of St. Petersburg, and in that Baptist church, and he has written a book that is totally outrageous. My book came from her, but he was called the father of the civil rights movement here in St. Petersburg. He used his church, as many black people did at that time, not as a Petersburg, and Jamestown on the north side is actually named. I believe that maybe she's finally stopped driving in the Cadillac. She has. Is that when I did talk about it, this man said, "Miss Reese, do you realize whose picture you're sitting in front of?" And I said, "No." And I turned around and I was sitting in front of a huge portrait of Elder Jordan.
And the congregation of Bethel, they founded, or actually had Bethel Heights built?
Yes. What is now Citrus Grove was a initiative of Bethel Community Church to address some of the housing needs in our community, and it was called Bethel Heights.
Because of the congregation.
Yes,
okay.
that's very true. And that's history. And a good friend of mine, Brady Johnson, uses the top end of the street, and he pushed his cart, and he had vegetables and peanuts and everything, and he would yell, "I got them! You want peanuts? I got them! You want collard greens? I got them!" And so that's way back in 1979 when it was located in the gas plant area. And we probably will see a better picture, but that big brown tank back there was the gas tank. And so that area, and I lived in the gas plant area, it was called the gas plant area. And then this is after they built their new church, but because their property was taken, but you know, they were compensated to a degree for it. But those two things devastated the black community, totally. Now I'm 64 years old. This is my daughter and I have a son. I cannot take my children and show them any part of my history before I married their father, and even after I married their father. My first school, the Trop. My first house that my parents lived in, the Trop. The second house my parents lived in, I-275. The church I was christened and married in, the Trop. The first house I lived in with my children, I-275. The first house that their paternal grandparents lived in, I-275. So all of that history is gone. I can't tell my children, this is where I went to school.
Right.
This is where I lived. I can't do any of that. Our community was devastated by those two things.
Wow.
Not just that it took the physical structures, but because it divided the community. We had a strong sense of community. Lock a door? Who locked the door?
Right.
You know?
Right.
If I didn't come home from school where I was supposed to, my mama knew it before I got home. You know, we had a community. And when this came through and people were scattered and had to go different places, it ripped apart our community. Another important fact that the mayor didn't tell them, the former mayor didn't tell them, he talked about building a dome without a baseball team. What he failed to tell them was when they took our property, it wasn't even to build a dome. It was to build an industrial complex to provide jobs for people in St. Petersburg, and with a large focus on them being jobs for black people.
Wow.
So when our property was taken, that was what we thought was coming. Now, did we want to give our property up? No. Were we compensated adequately for it? Not necessarily. But that's what we thought was coming. There were plans. We knew about it. And then nothing happened. And then they built a dome.
Wow.
Which was cursed for many, and those aren't my words. There was an article in the St. Petersburg Times by a chief of an Indian tribe who talked about that property where the dome was built being cursed.
Wow.
And being cursed for many reasons, but one, the lies upon which it was built. And he said there was a burial ground underneath it.
And the team still is cursed.
Opened a black school the school for black students, and parents of the school board agreed to pay half of the cost. Now, even though we had schools, oftentimes they didn't pay our teachers. When they built Gibbs High, we didn't have a school bus, so the parents got together and they did fundraisers and all kinds of things to buy a school bus. It was the only high school, so people had to go quite a ways. So go back to communities. Education was so important. We didn't rely on the white man and anybody else to do everything for us. We pulled together, we raised money, we did what we had to do to get our children educated,
Right.
because we knew how important it was.
Right.
Gibbs High School was a school built for white people. And I've forgotten what happened. Something happened and maybe we were moving too much out there. Very recently, was principal of Gibbs High School for a number of years. But more than that, he was a part of the community. See, back in the day, you know, teachers go to school now, they teach your child and they leave. Okay. Back in the day, primarily, somewhat because of segregation, that didn't happen. The teachers lived in the community, they went home to the community, they were involved in the community. They would come knock on your mama's door to say, did you know Dolores didn't come to school today? So we didn't have hooky playing and all of that, because the secretary doesn't say that here, but he was. And he taught music at Gibbs High and at Gibbs Junior College, and was an accomplished jazz musician, so much so dogs would go piss on wood. It's swear that's what made the barbecue taste so good. But Geach's people came from all over the Southeast United States for Geach's barbecue, and he had a muscle. You saw his wife earlier. In fact, what I forgot to tell you was that she was a very good friend of Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune.
Oh.
And that's one of the reasons she was founder of the National Council of Negro Women, but they were very good friends, as was her aunt, Miss O.B. McLean. Dr. Ponder was one of the first pioneer black doctors, and he was the staff physician at Mercy Hospital. And I was fortunate enough to grow up next to his house, and they had a hedge of chairs. Dr. Fran Alsop, Dr. Swain was a dentist, and he has children living here and an ex-wife. Not ex-wife, but a widow, whatever. And Dr. Alsop was a general practitioner. Once again, let's talk about a role. They weren't just doctors, see. Right. They were community activists. They were the leaders. They were in the forefront. They initiated many of the suits in St. Petersburg when we sued the city to open the Spa Beach. When they used to house, Dr. Swain housed the black baseball players in his home, because even when they would come to play, they could not stay in the hotels with their white teammates. And so he would house them, as many other black people did, in their homes. So these two men, along with Dr. Wimbish, you'll see later, Ralph Wimbish, were very much at the forefront, and Reverend Enoch Davis of the Civil Rights Casino. And the Manhattan Casino was where everybody who was anybody played. We had local bands. I see Fess Clark's name up there. His son, I saw the other night, he was a barber. I'm trying to see some of these names, but these are local people. However, we had B.B. King, Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, it was the place to go. Also, Gibbs High had their proms there. So it's sort of how she has a daughter still living here. Her husband was, I think we're going to see his picture later, was a black dentist who was also very much a civil rights activist, who died at a very young age. She is not a medical doctor, even though the clinic is named after her. She had a PhD. Smart woman. She was the first person, African-American woman, to earn a doctoral degree at a Florida public university, and it wasn't an all-black university. She was incredibly smart. She was so far ahead of her time, and there's now a scholarship at St. Pete College in her honor. Who do we have here? Fred Menace. Fred Menace was one of our black attorneys, and he was also very much, and he was our first black state legislature from our district. Ernie had worked for years to create that district so we could elect a black person. And a lot of older people, including Obie McLean and many others, felt that was his seat and he should have it. But for some reason, Doug Jameson decided to run for that seat. And those of us my age felt we needed and wanted someone our age who understood to represent us. And he successfully defeated Morris Milton to become our first state legislator. He was later appointed by Governor Lawton Childs to be the Commissioner of Education. And they were hired the year I was born. And they were incredible. It was very difficult at that time. I didn't know them. I knew the second wave, Sam Jones, Jimmy King, Fred Crawford, Williams, Deloach. I knew that wave. Well, Sam Jones is here. That's Sam Jones standing right there. That's Sam Jones. But the others I didn't know as well, but we know their stories. Why? And did they kill him? But they attacked both of them. And for the construction of the Jenny Hall-Unity block development. Later, there it is, an industrial park was proposed for the area. I didn't know they had that in writing anywhere. But a black woman wrote this book. That's why it's in there.